And therefore, imagine a global network where power isn't centralized but distributed. 4. That's the promise of BRICS, an evolving alliance of emerging economies that's reshaping the architecture of influence in the 21st century. Or originally made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the group has now begun to expand. Egypt has joined, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE are now part of it. Saudi Arabia is very likely next, and while Argentina up to for now, the momentum has already shifted. Therefore, but here's what matters most. India didn't just join this expansion, it helped shape it. Because in a decentralized world, 4. Influence isn't grabbed through power, it's designed through balance, trust, and vision. Let's zoom out. In any system, be it biological, mechanical, or digital, or political, there comes a moment when centralization becomes a weakness. It works efficiently for a time, but eventually, therefore, it starts to break under its own weight. A single point of control becomes a single point of vulnerability. 4. That's exactly what we're witnessing with the old global order. For decades, it was tightly centralized around the West. Especially after World War II, trade routes, security institutions, global finance, and even cultural narratives were all rooted through that central node. But all systems evolve, and the evolution of global power is now favoring something else in networks, redundancy, and shared trust. BRICS started as a symbolic conversation, a loose coalition of large non-Western economies that were growing fast and were tired of playing by rules they didn't help write. But today, BRICS has become more than a symbol, becoming a platform, a strategic infrastructure, a parallel system, a kind of operating system upgrade for the way global diplomacy, finance, therefore, and trade can be done. The expansion into BRICS is not just about size, though it's massive. Together, these countries now represent over 40% of the world's population and nearly a third of global GDP. But beyond the numbers, the real strength lies in how BRICS is being built. It's not a monolith, it's a mesh. It's not enforcing sameness, it's allowing diversity. That's not rebellion, that's design. Think about how satellites are built. You don't design them with single fail points. You build them with redundancy or overlap and optional paths. If one module fails, the system adapts. That's what BRICS is becoming. A resilient, distributed economic structure. 4. It's not designed to destroy the dollar, but to create optionality around it. Countries are exploring trade settlements in local currencies, and therefore, development banks are being designed without the conditionalities of traditional Western institutions. For energy diplomacy is being reshaped, not through caution but collaboration, and India is the quiet architect of this shift. While China brings economic scale and Russia brings geopolitical edge, India brings something that both completes and stabilizes the equation. Balance. Therefore walks between worlds. It trades with the US, invests in Europe, develops Africa, and partners with Russia, China, and the Gulf all at once. It's not forced into camps. It creates alignment where none existed. That's not a position of weakness. That's strategy. You see, therefore, India isn't trying to break the old system. It's trying to build the next one. It's thinking like an engineer. Global order was like a mainframe computer, centralized, powerful, but limited. The new global system is becoming more like the cloud, distributed, resilient and scalable, and India is helping to design the code. Look at the new BRICS members: Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, the UAE, Ethiopia. They come from different political systems, different religions, different geographies, but they all share one thing. They want options, or they want more voices in the room, and they want systems that don't require loyalty oaths, ideological conformity, or dependency. They want partners, or not patrons, and India fits that model. India brings with it energy flexibility. It imports oil from Russia, builds solar corridors with the UAE, co-invests in green hydrogen with Europe, and rolls out EV and battery ecosystems at home. It's the third largest oil importer, but also one of the top solar producers. It's not building energy dependency, it's building energy architecture. It's agile, it adapts, it designs when the conversation in BRICS turns to financial reform, like creating new currency frameworks or alternative payment systems, India doesn't rush in to burn bridges. 4. It advises caution, flexibility, interoperability. It understands that currency is a product of trust, not a tool to replace it. Therefore, before you change how the world pays, you must first build the rails on which that system will run. That's the same logic behind India's domestic digital public infrastructure, UPI, Aadhaar, DigiLocker. These are not just apps. 4. They're system-level innovations that are now being studied and replicated around the world. 4. And not because India forced anyone to use them, but because they work. That's the magic. That's the leverage. The global south doesn't want lectures. 4. It wants infrastructure that actually functions, that connect, ports that deliver, payment systems that move money with zero friction. India builds those, therefore, not as theory. But in practice, that's why when countries like Egypt or Ethiopia look for tech partners, India makes sense. It has the scale, therefore, the cost efficiency and the mindset of mutual progress. It's not extractive, it's collaborative. Now, let's look at something deeper. BRICS isn't a team of best friends, it's a coalition of big personalities. Russia and China, Brazil and South Africa, Iran and Saudi Arabia. These nations have internal contradictions, border tensions, political instability, and yes, rivalries, but India manages to speak with everyone. 4. It works with all sides, and somehow all sides respect it. That's rare. That's important. Therefore, because what BRICS needs is not just muscle, it needs a mediator, a design layer, and that's the role India is playing. Think of it this way. 4. When building a complex system, a rocket, an AI model, a national digital ID, the key is not how loud the components are, it's how well they work together. For the most important part is often invisible. It's the protocol layer, the translator, the bridge. That's what India is doing inside BRICS. 4, not leading through force, but through functionality. And this is not just about South-South cooperation. India still trades heavily with the West. 4. It still works with Japan, with Australia, with Europe. That's the brilliance of its diplomacy. It isn't obsessed with polarity. Therefore, it's building multi-alignment, optionality, bridges, not walls. India doesn't want to dominate the new world order. 4. It wants to ensure it has enough lanes for everyone to move freely. And in a time when institutions are fragmenting and trust is in decline, kind of leadership matters. Quiet, consistent, committed to systems that work. BRICS is not perfect, but it's evolving. 4. It's a sign that the world no longer believes in single source dependency. That resilience now means more than military power. It means being able to adapt. Therefore, to India is helping the world choose better. And in that role, 4. It might just be writing the blueprint for what comes next. Not a new empire, but a new protocol for global cooperation. One where stability, balance, and design lead the way. Therefore, imagine a global network where power isn't centralized but distributed. Promise of BRICS. An evolving alliance of emerging economies that's reshaping the architecture of global influence. Originally formed by Brazil, for Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the group has now expanded to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE, with Saudi Arabia showing strong signals of entry. Argentina was invited, though they chose to sit this phase out. 4. But what matters more than membership is momentum. And the momentum is shifting, not away from the West in rebellion, 4, but toward a world of alternatives, where design, not dominance, dictates power. India didn't just join this expansion. It helped shape it. 4, because in a decentralized world, influence isn't seized. It's architected. 4, systems that last aren't built through force. They're built through function. And India understands this better than most. 4, as the world shifts from hierarchical structures to distributed ones, from the mainframe to the cloud, from central command to networks of mutual interest, BRICS is emerging not as a rebellion, but as a redesign. Let's step back. Every system eventually outgrows centralization. Whether it's a neural network or a planetary orbit or a global economy, centralization creates bottlenecks. It creates single points of failure. That's what the old world order became, or post-World War II. The global system was anchored tightly around the West. Military alliances, currency dominance, Bretton Woods institutions, and top-down governance. It worked for a while, then it stalled, then it fragmented. And now we are watching something new rise from the edges, or the architecture of resilience. BRICS is no longer just a meeting table, it's becoming a platform. It now represents over 40% of the world's population, or nearly a third of global GDP, and perhaps more importantly, a growing share of global imagination. But size alone isn't its strength. For the real innovation lies in redundancy, designing systems with overlap, alternative flows, backup routes, not relying any one node to carry the full weight, and therefore not depending on one currency, one nation, one voice. That's how resilient systems are built, and that's exactly what BRICS is evolving into. In that design, India doesn't sit at the edge. It anchors the network. It doesn't bring brute force. It brings balance. Therefore, it's not trying to dominate any table. It's making sure the table is wide enough for everyone to sit at. While China and Russia bring their assertiveness, and new members bring energy clout or political heft, India brings diplomacy, technology, and quiet consistency. It doesn't escalate. It aligns. It doesn't disrupt, it stabilizes. India understands something many others forget. When you're building for the long game, you don't rush change. Therefore, you don't burn bridges. You build interoperable layers. You let systems talk to each other. You let evolution happen gradually with consent, with trust, with proof. And that's what India is doing inside BRICS and increasingly across the globe, not by force. By design. Let's move from the language of oil and geopolitics to the language of infrastructure and code. The 20th century was about controlling territory, the 21st is about controlling infrastructure, especially digital infrastructure, not just roads, ports, or weapons, but the invisible layer. Therefore, the layer that connects people, moves money, stores trust, delivers identity. And in this domain, India stands tall. While most nations imported Western tech stacks or relied on closed ecosystems, India did something bold. It said, let's build our own digital rails. Let's make them public. Let's make them open source. Let's make them scale. And what emerged is now one of the most sophisticated digital infrastructures on Earth. 13 billion people with secure biometric ID UPI, real-time zero-cost payments flowing across sectors and classes. 4. Secure cloud vaults for every citizen. A full digital toolkit, not just for governance, but for life. This infrastructure wasn't just built for India, it's being adopted globally. France, UAE, Singapore, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, all are either studying or integrating with Indian platforms, not because India demanded it, but because it works. It's modular, portable, proven at population scale. And this is where soft power meets systems power. Imagine a BRICS-wide payment platform not built in Beijing or managed from Moscow, but modeled on UPI, open source, real-time, secure. Imagine digital identity systems for refugees or migrants modeled on Aadhaar. Portable, trusted, universal. These aren't theoretical, they're already in motion. And they show exactly why India is not just another BRICS member. It's a protocol layer for the future. Not hardware, not loud software, but the system glue, the thing that helps everything else connect. India doesn't try to dominate the conversation. It tries to structure it. While some BRICS members push for de-dollarization or new currencies, India is cautious, not resistant, but smart. It understands you don't fix finance by changing currency symbols. You build rails first. You test systems. You iterate. And only then do you scale. That's engineering logic. That's India's approach. This isn't just about BRICS. This is India's playbook in the world. Quiet, consistent leverage. 4. Infrastructure first, diplomacy second, narratives third. While others chase headlines, India builds layers, one pipeline, one payment rail. Therefore, one energy corridor at a time. And suddenly it's not just a participant, it's a reference. Others look to it not with fear, but with trust. In Africa, therefore, India is helping build infrastructure and digital inclusion. In Southeast Asia, it trains digital talent and partners on tech. In the Middle East, it co-develops energy solutions and digital trade. In Latin America, it connects through BRICS and shared market access. 4. What matters isn't just where India shows up, it's how. It doesn't arrive with, there's what we'll do for you. It says, here's the model, or you build it your way. That's not charity, that's modular design. Let's come back to leverage, because in every complex system, be it a rocket for a financial market or a geopolitical alliance, there are leverage points, small changes that lead to massive downstream effects. Therefore, India understands where those points lie in digital infrastructure, in trade diversity, in energy agility. For India is the third largest oil importer, but it's also building the largest solar parks, clean hydrogen corridors, and EV ecosystems. Or it buys discounted oil from Russia, co-innovates with Europe, and partners with the Gulf on petrochemicals. That's not confusion. 4. That's energy architecture. That's leverage. It's the same with trade. India exports to the US, manufactures for the global south. 4. Runs tech corridors with Japan and builds infrastructure with Africa. It doesn't rely on a single partner or market. That creates resilience, and resilience is power. So when newer BRICS members like Ethiopia or Egypt want to plug into the system, not just diplomatically but technologically, India becomes the natural choice. It has the trust, it has the tools, and it has the template. This isn't a one-time story. It's a system shift. In a world defined by noise, India is becoming the stabilizing input, not overpowering, not antagonistic, but reliable. Useful, therefore neutral, future-ready. As the world fractures into multiple spheres, political, economic, technological, India offers bridge between them all. Or it buys oil from one and builds apps with another. It disputes borders, but cooperates on platforms. It doesn't ask who's in charge, it asks what works. Therefore, that's why India's role in BRICS is so powerful, not because it's the richest or loudest, but because it understands the logic of tomorrow. And tomorrow isn't about control, it's about connectivity, not dominance, but design, not shouting, but scale, not isolation, but interoperability. For in a time when the world is overwhelmed by complexity, India is doing something rare. It's building simplicity that works. It's not just playing the game, it's designing the field. And that's why, quietly, steadily, and irreversibly, India is becoming the backbone of the new world order.